welcome back. Today we are making turkey gravy. So in yesterday's video you watched us make the turkey. And you guys know we like to make the turkey a couple of days in advance because we like to have the turkey fat and the turkey au jus separated. And we drain it off the turkey, we put it in like a Pyrex so we can scrape off the turkey fat and save the au jus separately, because we use both things to make two different kinds of gravy, because I'm picky and I'm not a big fan of the cornstarch gravy that everybody else likes. I prefer a milk gravy like what you would have with fried chicken. And I know that's not for everybody, but today we're gonna show you two different kinds of gravy that you can make for Thanksgiving.
They're both inexpensive. They're both very easy.
Very fast.
And if you feel like you didn't make it right, or it's lumpy, or it tastes bad, it's easy to start over and do it again.
Yep. So let's start with the milk gravy.
Okay.
So let's move over to the stove.
So you remember when we peeled the solidified fats off of the au jus from our turkey? So I put that separate, and that's what this is. It's just the fat. And when you're making a roux, that's what you need.
You need fat and flour.
And that's your roux.
Cooked over heat. You can make a blonde roux, you can make a darker roux, depending on what you're gonna make. I think, is it gumbo that uses like a really dark roux?
I think so, but I don't make it, so I don't know. I'm gonna put just a little bit of turkey seasoning in it. I know it's already seasoned with the turkey, but gravy, because it's thicker, tends to really hide a lot of the flavors. So I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit on top, and I like doing that at this stage. You can always add it at the end, but I really like doing it at this stage because it helps the seasonings bloom.
So sage and poultry seasoning.
Salt and pepper we can add at the end. I don't like to put much salt in it because I love salt.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't have hypertension, so I can have all I want. But I tend to oversalt.
Yeah.
So I would prefer to just add pepper at the end, and then at the table, people can either add no salt,
they can
or
salt
as much
to
as
their
they
own
like.
taste. Okay.
Now, I know if I was a real chef, I'm supposed to have it so they don't need salt or pepper at the table, but I think
that's not realistic. People like it different ways.
You need to be able to individualize what you're doing.
So now you're adding sifted flour.
How I do this is I want to make sure I have enough flour that it's a paste.
Okay.
And you've got to cook it long enough, and you can really smell the turkey in this grease. That you cook the raw flour flavor out.
So you just cook it for a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
So if you make chicken gravy, like for fried chicken,
It's the same
it's
way.
the same concept, but it's going to be a lot more blonde than chicken gravy, isn't it?
Yes. But you see how it's still a little bit wet, a little bit loose? So I want to just keep sprinkling it in. Now, my mom never measured. She knew she could just dump it in there with a spoon, and it turned out perfect.
The humidity kind of makes a huge difference, I think.
My brother can make gravy so well. But the only way you get good at some of this stuff is you just keep practicing. And if you make something you don't like or doesn't taste good, you just feed it to the chickens. You don't have to use a cast iron skillet.
But you should.
I think it makes better gravy.
Yeah, clearly. Are you trying to get rid of all the lumps?
Yeah. Now this was the point my mom would have me turn it up high, get your milk, and I use whole milk, and you just start pouring. And you, depending on how big a pan you've got.
This is after you cook the flour.
After you cook the flour, that's when you add your milk.
Because if you don't cook the flour and it doesn't bubble, it won't thicken, will it?
And it won't be smooth, it'll be lumpy. Now if you're making chicken gravy and you've got those little pieces of the fried chicken in there, it's not going to be smooth anyway, but all the flour lumps will still cook out. So now what you're doing is you're just activating the thickening agent in the flour, and so you just want to stir it till it boils. And you might think, oh, this isn't going to make, it's not going to work.
It's too thin. Yeah, just wait, just watch.
Be patient.
Yep, give it a minute or two. What's your heat at right now?
I turned it up, I'm almost like 3/4 of the way up. And you do want to stir it, because if you don't stir it, it won't cook evenly and it will be lumpy again. So you want to just keep moving it around in the pan. And it does not take but just a few minutes. So if you feel like, you know, drat, I didn't get it made right, you can just start over again. It's not a big deal. Flour, milk, and that grease are inexpensive.
And we didn't use all of that grease.
No.
How much did you use? 3-4 tablespoons?
Probably.
A good scoop?
But you've got to
Quarter
remember,
cup?
yeah, just a 1/4 cup. That goes a long way.
Yeah,
to
it's
make
already
gravy.
thickening. Look at that.
Yeah. And it's not boiling yet. If it's too thick, you just add more milk. If it's too thin, you just cook it a little longer, and that steam will cook that milk out of there.
But you can really stretch this gravy to feed a lot of people.
Yeah.
Now it's bubbling.
And so you'll get the idea. You might see one bubble here and one bubble there, and as soon as it starts to bubble, turn your fire completely off.
So just the residual heat will continue to cook this gravy.
Yep. And that's when it gets so nice and thick and luscious. And,
silky.
And yeah, look how smooth and silky that is. All right, so that's your flour type gravy, because some people prefer the flour gravy.
I do. I'm one of those. So now we're going to make a more traditional style of gravy.
Yeah.
With cornstarch.
So the cornstarch is a thickening agent in this instead of the flour, and it's cooked differently. So there's very little grease in this. You just need water, and this is a 1/4 cup, 1/3 of a cup? Some.
Enough to make a slurry with your cornstarch. You never want to add cornstarch directly to any sauce or anything.
Anything warm.
You take your cornstarch and you add it to water or juice or whatever that's a cool liquid, and you dissolve it completely. You want to make sure that there are no lumps, because cornstarch will make really, really big lumps if you don't dissolve it completely first in a cool liquid before adding it to your hot liquid that you're trying to thicken.
And so you're probably thinking, well, how much cornstarch, how much water? Some.
Yeah.
Your slurry, it doesn't matter how concentrated it is. Okay, so you can make it fairly concentrated, and you can put a couple tablespoons of
you
it.
can put a lot of cornstarch in your water.
Because this is the last thing you're going to add to this.
And you're never going to add the whole thing all at once. You add a little bit at a time, and you stir that, and you see what happens. And then you add a little bit more of that, and you stir that, and you see what happens.
So you remember earlier when we had the turkey, we took that bird and we split up the au jus.
Right.
And the fat.
So we used the fat to make the milk gravy, which is less traditional than this kind of gravy. And now we're using the juice from the turkey instead of the fat from the turkey, and we're going to heat that up until it dissolves and melts.
This, you can tell, is a non-stick pan, and I have a non-melting silicone stirring utensil. So I am putting this au jus back into liquid form, and I'm going to bring it up to temperature.
So it's essentially like melting down Jell-O.
Yeah.
Are you going to boil it?
I'm going to bring it right to boil,
Okay.
but not boil. So almost, actually just a little bit below simmer. And you know, you can kind of tell, gosh, if it does boil, you've not ruined anything. You just cool it down a little bit. Just turn your fire down. And you can just see in the au jus, there's just a tiniest little
skim of fat on top.
On top of that, just a very little bit. And you know, that's okay. It's going to go into the gravy fine. You don't want it to be covered with it.
Right.
And that's why you wanted to cool this and then peel that fat off of the top of it. So once you start putting that in, just put a little bit in, but now you want to turn your heat up. And this is something else you have to be attentive to. You can't be doing 3 other things at the same time as you're doing this.
You have to babysit your gravy.
You have to stir it, because when this begins to boil, that's when it's going to lump. And that's why you, on a non-stick surface, you want something that's not going to scar your pan up.
So you could use a silicone spatula, silicone whisk.
Yeah. silicone spoon, but just something that's not going to tear up your nonstick pan. Now, if you're making the flour gravy, it has to be in a pan that's going to get really hot, really even to cook that roux. And this just has to boil.
So you could make this in just about anything. Could you make this in the roasting pan that you cook the
A lot of
turkey
people
in?
do.
Okay. Because then it's already, your turkey juice is already in there.
Right.
So if you make your turkey the day of, instead of days in advance.
The reason I don't is because of that whole fat.
Yep. No, that makes sense.
I had some drops of water. I had just washed this pan out, and so that's, yeah, sizzling underneath of there. You can see that the steam is coming off, so you know it's getting to temperature. And when the cornstarch slurry cooks, it will almost become clear. Now, it might be opaque because of the turkey juice that's in it.
But it's not going to be white
See how
or milky
clear that's
anymore.
becoming?
Yeah.
And that's another clue that you're really getting close to that boiling point. And just keep moving it.
This also helps you gauge the texture and the thickness of your gravy. Because you want to pull it from the heat when it's where you want it, don't you?
Yep. If you don't bring it to a boil, you have not fully expanded the starch molecule to all of its thickening capacity. And so that's why you keep your slurry here, and you just add what you need to make it as thick as you want it. Now, it will thicken some. So if it's really thick on here, it's going to be like glue when it cools.
Okay.
But if it's pretty thick on here, then it might be just the consistency that you want it.
Okay.
If it's really thin here, it's not going to thicken a whole lot more.
Okay, so it will thicken a little when it cools.
And you can tell that this is not quite the thickness of maybe honey. You know, this is maybe the thickness of maple syrup now, and we want it to be a little thicker than that. Yeah, and I'm starting to see some little tiny bubbles in there.
I can
don't
see
know
them
if you
too.
can see those. So I know I've probably obtained all the thickening that I'm going to get, and I'm just going to add a little bit more, and you can see how it's white. And then how quickly that becomes opaque. Just add a little bit more.
Just
Let
a
it
little
come
bit
to
at a time.
temperature. And cornstarch is really inexpensive. Now look how much it thickened this time. And I think that's about where I'm going to want it to be. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. Because we're not going to sit down and eat it right now. So this is going to cool a little bit.
And thicken.
And thicken a little bit more. And we'll show you what it looks like in a little bit. So you saw how we cooked the flour gravy in the cast iron skillet. And I kind of like cooking flour gravy because that grease seasons your cast iron. This is how much gravy we made. It does not take a lot, just a few tablespoons of that grease to make your roux, and then the rest of that is milk.
And it makes a pretty decent volume of milk gravy. This could feed me a couple of times. I really like this milk kind of gravy. This on turkey, this on breakfast sausage, this on a spoon, makes me happy. I love this kind of gravy.
And it'll keep several days. So that's why I just made a small batch. Right now it's just the two of us, and we want to show you how to do it. We've still got all that stuff.
All that turkey.
Yeah, all that turkey and all that turkey juice and that turkey fat. And now I've got it in the separate containers, and we're just going to freeze that turkey juice and turkey fat. And then if we want to make more turkey gravy, we'll just defrost it.
Yep.
Then you saw how we used the turkey juice, the au juice from the turkey, to make the cornstarch gravy, and we didn't make a whole lot of that either, but that's the consistency, and that's about the consistency that my family likes for that to be. It'll coat the back of the spoon. It doesn't come out like it's glue.
I just want to come up here a little bit closer to show the texture. So it's not thick and gloopy, but it is thick enough that it will coat the spoon, it'll coat your turkey, and it's not going to run all over your plate.
Now you might have noticed that when we made the flour gravy, we put in extra seasoning. You do not typically need to do that when you make cornstarch gravy. That flour will soak up that flavor and you'll need more seasoning. But it's about 1-to-1 for the juice to this cornstarch gravy. And it is perfect flavor.
Yeah, this didn't need any seasoning in it, and this is really flavorful. For me, it's the texture that I don't like. It's too much like Jell-O, and I don't like Jell-O. But I think it's nice to have both.
Yeah.
Have a little bit of variety, and like you said, it's really fast to bring these together, and they are pretty cheap. You need milk, flour, and turkey fat for the milk gravy, and you need the turkey juice, which you should already have if you're making a turkey, and cornstarch and water.
You could use the turkey broth, but you'll probably have to put in other seasoning in there. These are something that I typically do the day of. I don't make them ahead.
Yeah.
And you have to babysit them, both of them.
But it comes together pretty quick. What, 15 minutes?
15-20 minutes to make both of them. So if you feel like I'm brand new, I don't know what I'm doing, practice a day or two ahead.
Right.
Even if you're not gonna, eat it, I'll just make a small batch just so you can practice and see how long does it take you. But you've got to have somebody that's going to be there and stir it. You want to make your cornstarch gravy in a non-stick pan.
Yeah, don't make that in a cast iron skillet. You can make the milk gravy in a cast iron skillet. It's really good for the cast iron skillet, and I think it gives the gravy really good flavor. But the cornstarch gravy really needs to be in a non-stick
pan. Yeah, and then make sure you use some kind of silicone stir device.
Yeah, don't destroy your non-stick.
I should have showed you, but we poured out the rest of our cornstarch sludge that we had made because we did not need it all. We just
the slurry.
Used, probably what, half of that slurry?
Yeah, we didn't use it all.
But you just put it in, cook it till it's clear. If it's not as thick as you want, put a little more in, cook it till it's clear, and add less and less and less each time you add it, because you're going to reach that point where all of a sudden it's going to go from that,
thin to very, very thick. Very quickly.
It'll do that all at once.
Yep. So
good luck.
Yeah, have fun. Let us know if you have any questions. We're happy to answer those, and you guys will see us in another VlogsGiving video with more of the Thanksgiving dinner tomorrow. Bye.